Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Education Station. My name is Julia, and I have Kristina here with me. Thank you for joining us this morning. Be sure to like and share this video so that all your friends can learn what you're learning about today. We are going to be changing up our schedule for these Creates and Education Station videos, so stay tuned on Facebook for updates about the new schedule for that. And I'm going to turn it over to Kristina to tell us about the animals she has with her right now.
All right, good morning, everybody. Today I thought it'd be another fun time to do a comparison again. So we have two of our lovely little spiders today, known as tarantulas. So they're going to be a little bit bigger than spiders. You guys, if you've been watching our Zoo Creates, have met Willow before, our rose-haired right here on my left. And then over here, we have another type of tarantula with us called our pink-toed tarantula, which is named Lars. If you can look really closely on her feet, you can see why she's called a pink-toed tarantula, because she actually has pink tips on her toes, which is pretty cool. And so today we're going to show some comparisons with them. As you see, Lars over here is up high in her enclosure, and she likes to be up high because she is an arboreal tarantula, which means that she lives up in trees versus down on the ground. And then over here you see our lovely little friend Willow is going on a little adventure. She is one of our terrestrial tarantulas, which means she likes to be on the ground. She's going to be a burrowing tarantula versus being up in trees. So she's not going to be found in trees like Lars would. Rose-haired tarantulas are from Argentina and Chile, and they're going to be down in the southern portions of South America, versus Lars over here is from Colombia, so she is going to be in the upper portions of South America, and she is going to be in a forest environment, versus Willow here would be more of a desert or forested. She's just going to be in different environments, but she's not as required for as many trees as Lars is. She's also being extremely active today, so you guys are getting to see how cool it is that tarantulas can walk with all of those 8 legs. Do we have any questions coming in yet?
We don't have any questions yet.
All right, and so if you look at our tarantulas, you see that one of the major differences between tarantulas and spiders versus size is all the hairs on their back. So tarantulas have these things called urticating hairs, which are how they protect themselves in the wild. So all of these hairs that you see on her backside, on her abdomen, those are those urticating hairs. And when she gets stressed out, when she is worried that something is trying to attack her, what she'll do is she'll take her back legs and she'll rub her abdomen with those back legs, making those hairs fly into the air. And they're extremely light, so when that happens, they can move with the wind, move with the air, whatever it is. So say a dog is up in her face and smelling her, she throws those hairs in the dog's face, and then that dog's gonna get it in its nose and its eyes, pretty much anywhere up next to the tarantula, and that can be extremely irritating for the animal because those hairs are meant to be irritants. They're supposed to be itchy, they're supposed to feel like microfiber, they do not feel good if they do that. So that's a sign of stress, and so our girls, as you see, they have full abdomens of hair, so thankfully that means they haven't gotten stressed around us recently. One thing I'm sure someone is going to ask is, do they bite? Are they going to bite me? As we've mentioned before, anything with a mouth can bite, but if they did, it would probably feel like a wasp or a bee sting. It's not going to hurt you, other than sting a little bit. There has been no recordings of tarantula bites ever killing people, so we are good on that.
So we had one question, why are they furry, which you kind of mentioned. That's a defense mechanism. And then someone asked, is that hair soft? And that hair actually has a hook on it, right? So it's
Yes.
a little coarser.
Yeah, the hairs on her abdomen are definitely going to be a little coarser. They're soft, coarse is the best definition. They're not going to feel hard like spines or quills, but they're not going to be as soft as, say, a dog's hair. Some of their hairs are even specialized to be able to pick up scents. So there are
cool.
hairs that have different meanings and different purposes for these guys.
All right, Dimitri wants to know if they spin webs like spiders do.
They do. Actually, I don't know if our camera can get it, but Willow in her adventures is actually using her little spinnerets on the back, those 2 little tiny things sticking out her backside, to spin a web as she walks. So her webs are going to be more along kind of, if she was out in the wild, she'd probably make a web here so then she could hide underneath it and burrow underneath it, versus as you see over here with Lars likes to make more of a hammock. She doesn't really want to make it to hide underneath. Neither of these tarantulas are going to use that web as their primary source of catching food, though.
Okay.
Like other spiders. They use it more for hiding and more for sitting up in high places. These guys are going to be called ambush predators. So they're going to wait for their food to walk by and then pounce and grab it then.
Awesome. Jordan, hi Jordan. They want to know, what do tarantulas eat?
That is a great question. So that depends a little bit on the tarantula size. These guys could definitely eat. We feed them crickets, mealworms, superworms, all those yummy types of bugs here. In the wild, they would eat bugs as well. And then if they get large enough, they can also even eat small mammals sometimes.
Wow.
So they can eat whatever they can catch and keep a hold of.
So you said the bigger ones can eat some of those larger prey items. Amanda wants to know how big tarantulas can get.
That is a great question. I know bird eater tarantulas are going to be some of the largest species, and I've worked with one before that when her legs were fully stretched out, they're about the size of my face.
Pretty big.
So they can get pretty big.
I think kind of what we use as a general guide is the biggest ones are about the size of a dinner plate, is I think what I've heard.
That's a good comparison.
All right, Keisha, hi Keisha. She wants to know how we know that they are females.
That is a great question. Size is going to be one of the biggest things, as well as age. So both of our girls we've had for multiple years. When it comes to males, they actually only live to be as long as it takes for them to mature, and they mature within 1 to 2 years. So their lifespan is going to be a lot shorter than our girls. Willow here is about 9 years old, and Lars, we've had her for over 2 years now. So both of them are definitely age-wise going to be females due to that. And then the other thing is actually size. Female tarantulas are going to be larger than males. When it comes to the rose-haired tarantulas, it's going to be body. That's the biggest thing. The males are going to have a smaller body, but their leg span is going to be the same as the females. And then I'm not 100% sure on rose-toed or pink-toed tarantulas, but the males will be smaller in general.
Gotcha. All right, we have Bridget asking if we can demonstrate how they attack their prey. We don't have any food with us, but typically they will kind of pounce on their prey and use those front legs to hold on to it. And maybe you could explain how they eat their food.
Yes, I can do that. So you see with the tarantulas, if you look really closely on Willow here, you always hear with spiders that they have 8 legs. And so if you look at Willow, you see those 8 legs, but then up front, you see 2 more. So it looks like she almost has 10 legs. And that's going to be the same with Lars, except hers, I think, are a little shorter. And so those extra legs up front are I consider them more arms than legs. They're called pedipalps. And so what they use is when they go to pounce, they'll use those to grab onto their food, and then they will bite with their fangs, which are also known as chelicera. So all these big fancy words that you can tell people. And so what those chelicera do is they will inject they'll inject their venom, which allows for the proteins to break down and pretty much make a slushy inside of the bug or whatever they are eating. And then their fangs are also like straws. So just like they can put the venom into the animal, they can also drink from their fangs as well. So it's kind of like they're sticking a straw in their food and having a nice little slushy.
Yum, that sounds so good. Shauna wants to know if we breed our tarantulas.
That is a good question. We do not breed our specific tarantulas. Typically, we only breed due to animals needing help in the wild, and neither of our tarantulas that we have here are threatened or endangered enough for us to get into the special breeding programs with them.
Okay. All right, so I have a question. Besides the habitat differences, are there any more differences that you notice between Willow and Lars?
Some of the things definitely are color. So Lars, since she's up in trees, she has that darker coloring to kind of help her blend in with the leaves and shadows up in the tree. She sadly isn't turned in the right direction, but just look-wise, if you look at her little feet pads, she actually has an iridescent coloring to them. So if you guys saw last week with Jersey, how she had that kind of rainbow coloring to her body, Lars has the same thing when it comes to her feet, which is really cool. I love the fact that we can see her feet in this enclosure. It's great. And then when it comes to the rose-haired tarantulas, they're going to be more of this kind of brown, sometimes even foxy red color, because that will help them blend into being on the ground, being near sand, dirt, all this stuff. And so they have the color differences for camouflage purposes based off of where they live.
All right. And do we have any other tarantulas in the education department?
We do have one more tarantula in our education department. She is another terrestrial tarantula like Willow, and her name is Pam. Pamela is her full name. She is a blonde desert tarantula, if I'm correct.
Yep.
And so the cool thing about tarantulas, a lot of people don't realize, is So we work with a lot of different animals at the zoo. I like to think that all animals have a personality, even when it comes to invertebrates like tarantulas. The best way to showcase that is actually how all of our tarantulas walk. So Lars, you see here, she's staying in her enclosure because since she is an arboreal tarantula, she's a little bit faster than our others. She's used to moving really quick. So we keep her in here just for safety purposes and making sure she doesn't try to run off on us. She's the curious one who would do that. Yeah. Willow here, you see that she's very dainty with her walking. She's very kind of like a lady with how she walks very elegantly. Pam is not. Pam is a stomper. She's very, if you can ever say that a tarantula is loud, she is a very loud walker. Okay. She kind of puts her feet down as hard as she can.
All right, Avi wants to know how many eyes a tarantula has and how well they can see.
That is a good question. Do you have a little bit more specifics on that?
So it's very hard to see. You have to look very up close, but they do have multiple eyes kind of clustered on the top of their head. And so they don't have the best vision. They actually, that sees more light differences. So they notice shadows from a predator being above them. And then a lot of their senses actually rely on those hairs to pick up vibrations. And so that's how they kind of figure out where they are and where other animals might be, is all those little vibrations in the ground. It vibrates through their hairs, and they're kind of able to figure out where a predator might be based on that. Keisha wants to know, do they jump and how fast are they?
That is a great question. Lars is going to be our fastest one. When it comes to jumping, Lars would probably be the one more opted to jump as well. Like I said, she's curious and she has no qualms about jumping out of hands. Willow is probably not going to jump. She's a little bit slower with how she walks, but when they do become startled, say if she was in the wild and felt threatened, they can move pretty quickly. I don't have a specific speed, but fast enough that if you're not careful, they can tumble out of hands.
Right.
So we are very careful when we hold them, so we do not do that.
So we don't hold Lars.
Yes.
Stephanie wants to know how old they get.
For females, they can get anywhere from 10 to 20 years. Rose hairs typically are 10 to 15 in human care, and I believe that's the same with our pink-toed tarantulas as well. And again, when it comes to the males, almost all species of tarantula, they only live to be 1 to 2 years. In human care, they can maybe get to 3 or 4, but it's a body thing. Their body can't actually live much past their maturity.
Gotcha. All right, Ryan. Hi, Ryan. He would like to know, what are some of the large spiders we might find here in Iowa?
Here in Iowa, I believe wolf spiders are going to be some of the biggest. I'm not actually originally from Iowa, so I don't know all of our native animals here.
I'm not from Iowa either.
You have the 2 non-native Iowans here. So wolf spiders are probably going to be my biggest guess, if not banana spiders, or I think y'all might call them garden spiders too. They can get pretty big. Their abdomen and thorax are about that long depending on how old they are.
Gotcha. So nothing as big as Willow that we have to worry about.
No tarantulas around here, don't worry.
All right. All right, let me see if we have any more questions coming up. Can you think of anything else that we should tell them about spiders?
Spiders, a lot of people will automatically look at spiders and they're like, ooh, that's a gross bug. First off, not a bug. These guys are invertebrates, and all bugs are invertebrates, but not all invertebrates are arachnids. So arachnids are their own special family because they have those 8 legs and they only have a thorax and an abdomen, versus bugs have 3 body segments. They have 1 more body segment than tarantulas do. As well as a lot of people I know do not like tarantulas, just like we had a snake last week. We bring all the animals that y'all are questioning whether you like. But tarantulas, just like spiders that we have around here, they're very important to the environment. A lot of people don't realize that things such as spiders or snakes are really good about keeping a healthy environment, making sure that the balance is even. Without tarantulas or without spiders around here, think about it. Some of their food most of their food are flies, mosquitoes, all these bugs that we find annoying. Without these spiders around, they would be here 10 times more than they are. Right. So these guys are really important to making sure that their environments around them are in a happy balance.
Gotcha. All right, Kenzie and Addie want to know how far tarantulas can walk in the wild and how long do they sleep?
Do you happen to know the answer?
I don't know. I know they don't typically travel very far from their burrows because they want to be sure that they can get back to safety pretty easily. So we'll have to look those up and get back to you.
We'll look those up and let you know. When it comes to when they're born, though, that's probably when they're going to travel the most,
Right.
because female tarantulas will lay egg sacs. The egg sac will protect them from the environment while they're developing inside, and they can have anywhere from 100 to over 500 eggs. And when they hatch, they are light enough that occasionally, a lot of people hear this with spiders, they can send out a little bit of a web and the wind will draw them away. That is actually a useful tactic because a lot of tarantulas are cannibalistic, which means that they will eat each other, they'll eat within their same species. So they want to make sure when they hatch, they get as far away from mom as possible. Mom keeps track of making sure the egg sac is safe until they hatch, and then it's free for all.
All right. Ben wants to know if tarantulas are dangerous, and I think you kind of touched on this before, but maybe you could repeat.
Tarantulas are about as dangerous as a wasp or a bee. So some people do have a affliction with their venom, just like some people are allergic to bees and wasps, so that just depends on the person. But if they were to bite you, it would honestly just feel like a bee or a wasp sting. It'll probably hurt a little bit depending on your pain tolerance, but there have been no studies or no documentations ever of a tarantula killing a person.
Okay. And another question that I have, you said the word invertebrate a couple times. Can you explain maybe what that means?
So that's a great question. I sometimes forget to explain things. Invertebrates are animals that don't have bones. So we're called vertebrates because we have bones within our bodies. Mammals, reptiles, all these things with bones, fish, anything like that, they are vertebrates because of that bone. They have a vertebrae in the back. Versus these guys do not. They have that exoskeleton that if you've seen some of our other shows I've talked about with the millipedes and the walking sticks. And those exoskeletons are kind of like a reverse bone in a sense. Our bones, our hard part of our body is inside and we're squishy on the outside. These guys are hard on the inside and squishy on the inside. Hard on the outside and squishy on the inside. So when we grow, our skin stretches with us and we grow and get larger, such as that. These guys are going to be different. When they grow, they actually go through this process called mulching. So it's kind of similar like the shedding we talked about with Jersey, except they're getting rid of all of their exoskeleton, not just that top layer of their scales. And so that is a very stressful process sometimes, as well as it can be dangerous in the wild because they're extremely vulnerable for an amount of time. While they are getting rid of that outer coating, they have to be on their back and they have to take anywhere from 30 minutes to a couple hours of kind of just wiggling a little bit at a time to get that molt off of them. So it's a very dangerous time for them in the wild, but it allows them to get larger, just like we get bigger when we grow.
And what's really interesting about those molts is they look almost identical to the tarantula. It can be a little scary the first time you encounter a tarantula molting, because suddenly, I know the first time I found one of our tarantula molts, I thought we had somehow put two of them together, because it looked like there were two tarantula in the enclosure together, and there should only be one. But then I realized that she had actually just molted, and so one of them was her old hair and exoskeleton, and then she was just sitting there right next to it drying off because they're a little wet when they first molt, so then they have to dry off.
Mars is doing a good job of showing how pretty she is now that she's relaxed.
Good. All right, I think this is going to be our last question. Is the fur on them for any special reasons? Maybe you could repeat that a little bit.
Yes, I can go over that again. So there's a couple special reasons about the fur. The hairs on their back of their body, back here on their abdomen, that is going to be their urticating hairs, which is a really weird word to say, but it has a purpose. Those hairs are their self-defense. So they will shake them off of their back when they get stressed off, and they are irritants, which means if you get it on your skin, it feels like you have a lot of little tiny thorns or something really itchy in your skin. So you can wash it off, but they are going to be irritating if they spray them on you. And then the other hairs on the legs are going to actually help them sense smell, vibrations, any of that stuff around them. They're kind of like an extra sense that we don't have. Our hair is not going to tell us that, you know, there's something good smelling that way. But for these guys, since they can't see very well, those hairs help them kind of identify where they should be going.
Alrighty. Well, that looks like all the questions that we have, unless you can think of some last minute facts for us. We might
I had one and it just, went away. So.
All right, then we're gonna go ahead and wrap up our video. Thank you so much for joining us. If you think of more questions, we can answer those in the comments, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.